Now, after falling for many years, there's been a recent uptick in the likelihood of a baby dying before its first birthday in England and Wales. The West Midlands has long had a higher rate than other parts of the country, and now BBC Newsnight has learnt that public health officials there have launched an investigation into why so many babies are dying in the region. We've also learned of fresh work being undertaken to tackle a very sensitive issue: how the offspring of parents who are closely related are more likely to be born with certain genetic illnesses. This report by our UK correspondent Deborah Cohen and Jake Morris.
Infant mortality over time has tended to be considered an indicator of the development of society, really, and it's a very sensitive measure of the socioeconomic conditions in which children are being born and growing up.
For many years, the likelihood of a child dying before their first birthday in the UK was decreasing, but something has changed.
It's very clear from the last 3 years that infant death rates are beginning to rise again, and that this trend is significant. It's not like the tide going in and out or up and down.
Around 4 in every 1,000 children in England and Wales are dying in their first year. That's up since 2014. It's a situation that's not gone unnoticed here in the West Midlands. The chances of a child dying before their first birthday in this region are significantly higher than the rest of the country. Following our inquiries, Public Health England has confirmed that they have started a fresh review into the reasons for this. The figures for most regions are near the England and Wales average, but in the West Midlands, that figure is significantly higher and also up since 2014. Drill down further into the figures for Birmingham, and it becomes apparent that in Britain's second city, things appear to be getting worse rather than better. We already know a whole range of complex and interlinked factors such as poverty, obesity, alcohol, smoking, and even how a child sleeps play a part in a high infant mortality rate. But here in Birmingham, they've known for many years that something else is at play. Cousin marriage in the UK is perfectly legal and has long been practiced in parts of the Pakistani and Bengali community, although it's becoming less common. Many children whose parents are close relatives are born completely healthy, but some aren't.
For my generation, dating is all digital.
Hiba Maroof from Bradford has recently investigated her own personal journey for BBC Three.
In my culture, many prefer to find their partner offline and in the family, with their cousins.
There's been a lot of studies in Bradford to show that we're kind of overrepresented when it comes to children who are born with genetic abnormalities. Like, the experience that I had talking to people was really interesting, because there were some people who were kind of like almost in denial about it, who'd be like, no, it's not the fact that I'm married to my cousin. I have 3 disabled children and they all have the same genetic illness, but it's not because I'm married to my cousin.
When babies are born to related parents, there's an increased risk of them being born with what is called an autosomal recessive illness. That means they may die in infancy or have lifelong health problems. We all have 2 copies of each gene. In recessive illnesses, people who carry one normal gene and one mutated one will not be ill. When a baby is born, it will inherit one copy of a gene from each parent. If both parents pass on their mutated gene, the child will be affected. Because these genes are inherited, the chances of the child of parents who are related being affected by an autosomal recessive condition rises from around 3 in 1,000 to 6 in 1,000.
So in our service in Bradford, we admit about 800 babies a year to the neonatal service.
Dr Sam Oddy is a neonatologist in Bradford. His unit looks after babies born with these very severe illnesses.
I look after newborn babies, and the parents of newborn babies often feel responsible for their baby's illness, no matter what the cause. But there's a very strong kind of guilt and stigma associated with genetic disease in whatever community and whatever the cause. There's no question that congenital anomalies are part of the underlying explanation for excess infant mortality in certain parts of the country. That's very clear. And those who suggest that's not the case are willfully not seeing the obvious.
In 2008, Birmingham was given funding for a major project aimed at reducing the number of children dying from autosomal recessive disorders. But in 2011, the funding was pulled.
We knew that we were raising awareness, and we knew that the message about the links with between these recessive disorders and marrying close relatives was getting through, and it's almost become part of the folklore, if you like. But in terms of people coming forward for genetic testing, and in terms of the reduction of deaths due to these recessive disorders, I don't think we were able to illustrate, because the programme only ran for 3 years, that we'd had a major impact on outcomes.
I think in many ways it was a successful project. It feels like it was a real missed opportunity to learn and to embed that learning into mainstream services.
Newsnight has been trying to piece together what has happened since the project finished in 2011. We've looked at 6 years' worth of unpublished reports into child deaths in Birmingham. They contain a series of recommendations into how affected communities can be better supported. In 2013, the Birmingham Child Death Overview Panel called for health services to identify pregnancies in which the parents were related, to allow enhanced surveillance during pregnancy, an opportunity for specialist genetic advice. A year later, their report said there had been no progress made on this issue. In 2015, the review panel asked for more to be done when a family has already had one affected child. NHS commissioners are asked to review the extent and reliability of these services and ensure that community pathways are in place. And in 2016 they said, it is recommended that all families who have a child with a chromosomal genetic congenital anomaly are offered a specialist assessment of risk and future options. It is unclear to what extent those recommendations have been acted upon. But what we do know is that despite the effects of consanguineous relationships, that's one between close relatives, having been known about here for decades, Birmingham's most recent public health report referred to it as an unresolved local debate. Dr. Zahir Ali is a GP just outside Birmingham. For many years, he looked after his niece, who has an autosomal recessive illness following a cousin marriage.
Well, speaking from a personal perspective, I personally don't believe things have changed a great deal. In my family, for example, the consanguinity still persists. The risks involved are very often put aside or just not acknowledged as perhaps they should be.
I think it's disappointing because the evidence is very clear, and what's unresolved is how best to approach it. But it's no good hiding your head in the sand. It is there. And I would say it's not just the question of how many babies die, but it's also the suffering, the loss and the disabilities that are caused if a child does survive after the first year of life, to those parents and to those families.
Few argue in favour of banning the marriage of cousins or other close relatives. Children born to older mothers carry an increased risk of illness too, but nobody would suggest older women shouldn't have children. So how can the risks be sensitively raised?
My documentary probably reached a lot of people my age, and it probably appealed to them because they saw someone who looks like them on TV talking about something that they know about or might affect them. Because usually if my documentary was presented by an English blonde girl.
Me.
Yeah, by you.
Yeah.
It probably wouldn't appeal as much because they'd be like, automatically in your head you're kind of like, oh well, you don't have first-hand experience, or you haven't lived in that environment, so you're obviously not more suited to do that.
Experts say there is some good work to help support communities going on around the country, but it's patchy, and more needs to be done to support the health needs of ethnic minority groups as a whole.
The NHS in Birmingham told us they are fully committed to reducing infant mortality and helping to raise awareness of consanguinity. Public Health England also told us they have arranged for Birmingham Council to receive expert advice. Meanwhile, Birmingham Council itself said it is running a project on the importance of knowing your family history before having children. They say there have been some improvements in tackling infant mortality, but there is still more work to do.